As if I'm supposed to know.
But it's generally thought that it is people like you who are responsible for this crisis.
Yes, well, I think that's broadly true, yes. Yes, we've given far too much credit, we've been paid far too much, and we've been stupidly greedy.
And so, what are you going to do about it? I mean, where do you go from here?
I've given this a very great deal of thought. And what I've decided to do is to go on doing the same things as long as I possibly can.
Surely that's an extraordinarily irresponsible attitude.
Well, yeah, you might say so, but I've considered all the options, and what seems to be the way it works is that I go along to the government and say, I'm sorry, but I've done something exceptionally foolish, which will cause enormous damage to the economy. And they say, have you? Oh, well then, here's £15 billion.
So, like nearly everybody else, you lost a great deal of money on property and derivatives.
A colossal amount of money. But there is a silver lining to it all, if you look hard enough.
Is there?
Yes, luckily I lost other people's money and not my own. That's something of a consolation.
Yes, it must be. So, you're all right, personally?
Well, you know, over the last decade or so, it's been very up and down. Sometimes I've had good years. Sometimes I've had incredibly good years. But with the best will in the world, it's impossible to spend the amounts I've earned, so I've still got quite a lot of it left. If other people had done what I did, they wouldn't be moaning about their food going up.
Yes, many people would say that it is those who can least afford it that will suffer most from your mistakes. Those with mortgages and credit card debt and the lower paid.
Well, I think it shows extraordinary lack of gratitude by these people for what we've done. I mean, if it hadn't been for us, the City of London would be just a pathetic backwater instead of the financial centre of the world. Think of the billions which flow into London every day, or used to. Think of the enormous amount of tax revenue that generates.
But people like you hardly pay any tax.
No, but think how much it would be if we did.
But haven't people in your world insisted on light regulation by the government and a generous tax regime? In 2002, Gordon Brown cut the capital gains tax on business assets held for 2 years from 40% to 10%. Yes. If you were a partner in a private equity firm making millions out of deals, these millions would be taxed at 10%. In effect, they would be paying income tax at 10% while their office cleaners were paying 20%.
Yes, as often said, but it's very simplistic. A lot of private equity partners weren't paying anything like 10%.
No?
No. A lot of them were paying 5%. Some of them were paying nothing. In 2006, there were 52 billionaires in this country. 32 of them didn't pay any income tax at all.
Well, why did the government go along with this?
Because the private equity firms went to them and threatened to move their businesses abroad. And the government said, please don't do that, we want you to stay here. If an office cleaner went to the government and threatened to go and clean an office in the Cayman Islands, the government would say, well, piss off then.
We know that American capitalism is morally right because its chief elements, private ownership, the profit motive, and the competitive market are wholesome and good. They are compatible with God's laws and the teachings of the Bible.
The world of banking has always attracted people of the highest caliber, lured by the challenge, the excitement, and something else. What was it? Oh, yes, the money. The money. Colourful characters like Matt Ridley, former chairman of Northern Rock, financial journalist, son of a Viscount, PhD in the mating habits of pheasants. But say what you like about Northern Rock, they had customers queuing round the block. Their chief executive, Adam Applegarth, started out as a cashier, made it all the way to the top, and fell off. Hardly surprising, given that he'd said that as a cashier he was particularly inept and couldn't get the till to balance. These people don't come cheap, and they certainly don't go cheap. Most people who leave their jobs in a hurry are lucky if they manage to grab a couple of pens and the office stapler on the way out. Applegarth took £750,000. That's nothing compared to America. Stan O'Neill left Merrill Lynch with a heavy heart, but a heavier wallet. Having lost the bank $8 billion, he took away $160 million. When Lehman's collapsed last month, their boss, Dick Fuld, said the pain would stay with him for the rest of his life, as would the $350 million he received in his last 7 years at the bank. And it's not just banks. One London hedge fund manager offered a £200 million bonus for 1 year's work, complained it wasn't enough. That's the bonus, by the way, not the year's work.
Last year, the top 5 Wall Street banks paid their workers $39 billion in bonuses. This year, having run up losses of $100 billion, 2 of those banks remain under a cloud, while 2 others have been taken over and 1 has gone bust. As you can see, this little piggy sold on Wall Street, this little piggy kept its home, this little piggy had roast beef, and this little piggy had none. And this little piggy went wee all the way to the Bank of America.
I don't know about you, Robert, but every time I read these figures out, I feel like I want to take a bath.
No time, Hugh.
The numbers look way out of proportion to the losses the banks were making, but then everything else was out of proportion, including the lending. Lending's nothing new, it's what banks do, it's how they make their money. But in the last few years, banks were so confident they were lending out huge multiples of what they actually held in assets. Not 10 to 1, not 20 to 1 double net, not 25 to 1, that's your pony macaroni, but 33 to 1, that's Bear Stearns, not the worst offender. Merrill Lynch out to lunch, 40 to 1, quadruple net, $40 lent for every dollar in the bank. Call yourself a banker. Banking is now so close to gambling that several city firms even have a bookmaking subsidiary. While on one floor, brokers deal in interest rates and currencies, on the next floor, traders take bets on anything from share prices to the aggregate of the goal scorers' shirt numbers in the FA Cup final.
I wonder, though, if you could explain some of the technical terms that apply to these transactions. Would you do that for the ladies and gentlemen?
Hit me.
OK. What do they mean by issuing debt?
Borrowing money.
Right. Raising cash?
Borrowing money.
Leveraging?
Borrowing a lot of money.
OK. Gearing?
Borrowing as much money as possible.
I'm beginning to get the picture. Interbank lending?
Banks borrowing money from other banks.
OK. Funding?
Lending money.
Aha! Got you. And how do they do that?
By borrowing money from other banks.
I don't know what I'd do without you, I really don't. Let me go in close on Mr. Peston there. Right in. There's your licence fee, folks, right there. So where's all the money gone?
Well, the truth is, Hugh, in many cases, it was lent out as soon as it came in. In fact, if you take a case like Iceland, what it was doing was essentially sucking in deposits from individual customers, from charities, from councils, and using that money as collateral to lend out astronomical sums of money. So much so that when it all goes belly up, they're liable for more than the GDP of the entire country.
Golly.
Indeed. As I said, Hugh, it's high-grade professional gambling. But it wasn't meant to be like this.
I've checked, and I'm happy to tell you that we can grant you that mortgage. But first, I must cross-check all the figures you've given me very carefully to confirm you are a safe risk, and that might take several weeks. Hang about, what's the time? Crikey, I must close for lunch. Fancy a pint? I'm cross-collateralised on 90-day defaults, unwound on short sells, and looking at a dead cat bounce on AAAs. Listen, text me how much you want, and bung us 5k as commission. Got a dash. Corporate training away day, and I'm organising the paintball.
But so-called gentlemanly capitalism was too good to last, and in the 70s came the development of derivatives. They'd been around for centuries, but took off in Chicago in the 1890s when farmers, worried about getting a good price for next year's crop, could agree a figure in advance with a willing broker, a bit like placing a bet. They'd say, I bet you my wheat's worth $20 next summer. And the other guy might say, OK, I'll agree to buy it at $20, gambling that by next year the price would have gone up and he'd get his wheat cheaply and pocket the difference. If the following year the price fell below 20, he'd still have to pay $20 and the farmer would have protected his losses, hedged his bets in other words. Applied to farming, derivatives made sense, but in the 1970s they began to be applied to everything from the price of cars to stock market levels, interest rates, currency values, you name it. Anything from financial futures to the number of twins to be born in Nebraska in 2020. That was according to Warren Buffett, the doyen of investors, who described them as financial weapons of mass destruction. But these ones actually exist.